No.
All right, welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. It's great to have you here on this Wednesday night. Uh, Bess and I are here. We had kind of a few issues with scheduling, and uh, one of the coaches is feeling ill tonight, so we've given them a break and are going to cover it ourselves between the two of us. So, welcome, and we look forward to digging into this topic. So, Bess, it's great to see you again.
I'm happy to be here tonight.
Excellent. So tonight's topic, and we want people to jump into this because this is a very personal thing. I think everybody goes through it, whether they're starting fighting, they're in it for a while, and they think, "Wow, my body's just not quite what I need it to be. I need it to perform better." But the topic is going to be physically training for our sport, and this is something every athlete, regardless of what sport they go through, is going to be faced. They might face that being having a coach lead them through it to say, here's what you're going to need to do. Here are the things you need to shore up. Your body needs to perform better. And that will include some maintenance. So we want to start out with this by saying we are not physicians, we're not doctors, we're not pretending to be, but we are athletes. We have experience in this. Any athlete will pick up knowledge about their body, knowledge about the athletics, knowledge about training just from doing it for a long time and speaking with other athletes and learning what they know how to do. Um, but I will also say, too, when you get started, the best place to get started is going to be take stock of where you are, what your body's current condition level of conditioning is, whether you have any injuries that you need to deal with or work around or work through or train out, because your body can heal. It's an amazing healing mechanism, but it requires you do the right things to help it along. And you can, by doing the wrong physical training, extend injuries and make them last a lot longer. So the first advice is, before you take on any training regimen or conditioning regimen or anything like that, do consult with a physician that can, especially one that has experience with sports athletics, that can help guide you through and alert you to things that you need to be aware of. Um, Anything you'd like to say, jumping off that first step?
Yeah, and actually, I would like to add, as we get older, so many people I know say, "Oh, I have aches and pains because I'm getting older." But if you're working with your body, it doesn't necessarily mean, "Oh, my body's like I just have to accept that I'm getting older, my body's like breaking down." More often than not, uh, it's because we have something wrong with us that doctors can fix. A friend of mine said he went to the doctor because he and for other unrelated things. The doctor did a bunch of tests, and the doctor came back and said, "You have diabetes. Your blood sugar fasting is like 350. Don't you feel like hell?" And he said, "Yeah, but I thought I was just getting old." So it doesn't necessarily mean, when you have something wrong or you're feeling old, it's not. Speak to a doctor, even if you're thinking, "Oh, it's not a big deal," because it could be. And don't accept feeling yucky or off just because you think, "Oh, I'm getting older," or that's just what happens to people. That's just
Sure.
he's a great awful story.
Yeah, and don't feel like you're being a hypochondriac by seeking out some help from experienced people. And there is, within the athletics field, there are also specialists, whether they're doctors or PTs, physical therapists. There are specialists that work with athletes specifically on that. Some of them are doctors, some of them are sort of below the doctor instead of not having a PhD, but are very experienced in guiding athletes through the issues that they have with their bodies. And this warning also: imagine your body much like a car. If your car, you only take it to the grocery store a couple of times a week, you don't need to take it into a mechanic on a monthly basis. If you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, a drag race, a dragster, drag racing car, it'll do one race, it'll go a quarter mile, and they'll tear down the entire car and rebuild it because of the abuse that car takes in that quarter mile. And an athlete's body is much the same way. The more you push it, the more you're using it, the more you kind of run it into the red zone, the more you're going to have joint wear, you're going to have tissue damage, you're going to have all of these things, some of which you may notice and some of which you may not, until it's becomes so painful that your body is reminding you, hey buddy, there's something wrong. Take me into the mechanic and have them, get it worked on. So my wife does exactly that. That is her field, and so she calls this being in your body, is to start feeling like a good driver can feel a little bit of a tick in an engine and go, I know it's low on oil. I need to maintenance this thing. I need to be careful of what I'm doing, and I need to attend the condition of the car. And so, and any athlete's body is the same way. And as we get older, things like joint aches and pains become commonplace. The harder we push ourselves on the field or in our competition, the more we're going to get shoulder strains, elbow strains, sore wrists and forearms, all kinds of stuff. So just keep that in mind as you are looking at, or as we talk about some of these things of using training to enhance your strength or your stamina or your cardiovascular fitness or your flexibility or any of these things. And Sunwolf posts up, he says, beware of overstretching before performance tasks. Beware of overtraining, period. It's very easy to get all eager and pumped up and watch Conan the Barbarian and go hit the weight pile and figure you're gonna solve be the hero of the world in a 30-minute workout, and then wind up hurting yourself. So that's why we say take stock of what your starting point is.
And you talk about seeing a physical therapist or seeing your doctor. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to go and like, hey, I find a sports medicine clinic. You don't have to do that. I see a chiropractor once a month. Mm-hmm. I go on the first Wednesdays of the month just for a routine random adjustment. My chiropractor knows what I do. I brought in my whole kit. He knows all about Pennsic. He's seen the videos, so he's aware of what my sport is. And it can be as simple as that. If when you're going for whatever routine maintenance you do, and you may not even go every month. You might think, I just like to go when I'm feeling a bit untuned. But bring in your helm, bring in your the stuff that you use, your kit, at least parts of your kit that you can carry. And I would suggest you have a video ready to go through YouTube so you can show whoever you're seeing, your healthcare practitioner, to say, this is what I do. This is how I got hurt. So they know specifically what you're doing, so they know what they're looking for. And if you're asking for advice or training, then they will know that specifically what to give you, having seen the sport. Because some people could imagine, I don't know, like fencing or some crazy Conan the Barbarian, or if they've seen Battle of the Nations, which is a ton of fun, they have a different idea of what we do as well. Mm-hmm. So there is that.
That's right. Absolutely right. So we kind of split these off into some categories, and I think we should start with the one that everybody thinks of first. And they'll think, I need to be stronger. I'm going to be wearing a suit of armor. That's going to be heavy. I'm going to be lifting a shield. That's pretty heavy. Even the sword sometimes can be a brick. I mean, what newbie has not gotten handed a 4-pound sword or some brick that they can barely hold on to, or not had the white knuckle thing where the first practice, after they release the sword, their hand does this again, and it's all like cramped up, and they got to open it up just because they're white knuckling gripping the sword, and it's probably heavier than they need anyway. So the strength is the one, and I think in addressing this, as I've seen many a new fighter just say, okay, I'm going to have to go to the gym and I'm going to have to start doing my bench presses and my get on the dumbbells and be doing curls. Yes, strength will help you, but there are different types of strength, and SCA fighting does not use the same kind of raw strength that Olympic weightlifting does, or powerlifting, or that kind of thing. Yes, that type of strength is useful for certain things, but SCA fighting is more of a finesse sport than a raw strength sport. And so when you look at it, personally, I have found that things like cable machines are a very limited use for SCA fighting in general. And I'll put an asterisk on that and say, if your legs are really thin or weak, then yes, you can get onto a leg sled or something like that to build your leg strength up, do some squats. And I'm not talking Olympic powerlifting squats, but just like body weight squats to get your leg strength and conditioning up so that you can run around or be walking. I know a lot of people have jobs where they're sitting at a desk all day and the legs tend to get a little atrophied, and they're fine for going to and from the parking lot or to go get coffee or whatnot, but put a suit of armor on them and run them up a hill, and now the legs are burning. So it's good to get those legs strengthened up, but make sure as you're doing it, you're not doing the short power motions that tend to be in things like squats. Do things like lunges where you're getting a stretching component in as well as the conditioning part into the muscles, as well as going side to side, because there's a lot of lateral movement in fighting, or there should be. It should not just be going back and forth. So building muscles up to get used to that, because when we normally walk, and walking is a great exercise, but your legs are always just going laterally forward. If they don't go out to the side, now they're not getting used to moving your body side to side.
And I would like to jump in at this moment because I'm doing rehab. I just had knee surgery. They removed part of my meniscus. And so I am working on strengthening both my quads and my knee. And some of what we're doing is side to side motion. And one of the exercises they've got me doing is, if you go to, here in Canada, we have a Winners, and the States, you have a TJ Maxx, at least you did a few years ago. But you can buy those really big, like elastic bands, the rubber bands. And they just got me putting them around my ankles, and just, they call them monster walks. And I just step, 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 step. And that helps with the inside and the outside parts of my quads, the muscles on the inside and outside, to provide the stability that Tristan was talking about. So you're not just going laterally forwards. There's also a kind of like a sideways lunge that you can do. We're all used to lunging forward, but in this case, you just kind of lunge sideways. And you don't have to go down and make a deep squat. It's just a part way, because you're really focusing on working your sideways muscles on your quads, the outside, your adductors and your abductors on your quad muscles. Quads just mean four. You got four muscles in your thighs, so we just call them your quads. So those are actual like exercises that you can do, and you don't have to be in a gym, and you don't have to buy super expensive equipment. If you don't want to buy an elastic band, well, the rubber bands, that's what I call them, but I think they call them like TheraBands or something, just stand up and raise your leg out to the side. That was, some of my exercises when I began. So again, it doesn't have to be a gym. It does not have to be a big fat hairy deal. You can do it a few minutes, a few times every day, and that will help.
Yeah, Sunwolf posted this up, and I want to share this. And this is a gem.
Oh,
The
there you go.
condition throughout the day, as you do things at home or work, do squats often, lunges, and that's the thing of it. One of the hardest things for conditioning is to chalk out an hour of your day dedicated to doing nothing but fitness training or conditioning, because everybody's got things that they have to do, or most everybody does. Not anybody's got time at home just to chalk off an hour every other day or something like that. So take 2 minutes as you're going upstairs, stop, and then do a few squats, do a few lunges, and just work that into your day. When you're by yourself, just go ahead and a minute or two, because everybody can spare a minute or two here and there versus doing 45 minutes or an hour of committed time.
Right. And I think I'll speak to it from a gym rat point of view. When people first join the gym, the first thing they do is they try to be Conan the Barbarian. They come in and they're going to win the gym. They're going to lift all the weights and run all the distances and do all this stuff. And then they're really sore and tired for several days afterwards. And they don't want to go back to the gym because it freaking hurt. And they didn't feel good, and they couldn't do anything. Driving was hard. Walking upstairs was hard. Don't do that. Baby steps, little steps are all that you need to do. You don't have to do like a freaking hour of lifting weights. Swear to God. See this? This is my water bottle. I don't know. It holds a liter. 34 ounces for you Americans. So it only weighs a little bit. We have little muscles in our shoulders. So if you have a water bottle at your desk and you want to work little muscles, look at me. I'm exercising. This is it, guys. This is all you have to do. It's not a gym. Then, in a surprise move, I go the other way and just in and out, because these are the motions that we do that we need to have when we're fighting. Or I went to, up here we have a Value Village. This is a 5-pound weight. just look, I just hold it here because that's where I hold my sword. It weighs more than my sword, but I'm cool with that. Oh, look, now I'm holding a shield. Ooh. And that's it. That's the extent of what you have to do. Not a big fat hairy deal, not a gym thing, not a big investment. I keep it beside the TV, and as I'm watching TV, I'll do 10, and that's it. That's all it has to be.
Exactly. And like I said, so many people get eager and they jump in with both feet and they go way too far and they strain and hurt themselves. Um, and then they get demoralized and be like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." So figure out where you're at. One of the things that, and we're going to be coming up to stamina, but I'm glad you mentioned was the small muscles. When you're are throwing a sword, you're not using the big muscle groups. You're using the small muscle groups, the controllers. That's what's aiming your sword. In terms of power, it should be coming from your hips, not your chest, not your shoulder, not your triceps. So that's where the form comes in. But what we really want to do is train those really small controller muscles, because if you push those little muscles and they're not developed, that's where you're going to get those weird strains. Your shoulder's going to be achy. Um, it's going to hurt. And small muscles don't need heavy weight to build. In fact, what will happen if you take too much weight? Now the big muscle groups will step in and say, "All right, little muscles, you can't handle this. We're
Right.
going to do the work." So
Step
now you
aside. This
think,
is a job for big muscles.
right, you're thinking that your big muscles are working and your brain's going, "I'm training and I'm getting strength out of this." And you are, but you're not getting it where you're going to need it. And that's going to be those little muscles that if you push them, you're going to tear them if they're not conditioned. And that's what you want to strengthen. Um, and we can kind of go into that a little bit more later with where this branches into form. But we want to talk about what to condition and how to build what you need for swordsmanship. And like I said, a lot of these things are, almost none of them are expensive equipment. You're not going to be spending $1,200 on some kind of a machine to sit in a basement like an iron octopus for you to go down there and work. Um, Most of this can be done with body weight or something small like a jar of fruit or a can of fruit, or something in your kitchen. A bottle of water is plenty for most everything you're going to need. So don't think, well, I can't afford this. One of the things that I will say that I ran into far too late, I wish I would have run into this when I was starting out, was Indian clubs. And this would probably be the biggest investment you'll spend, because a pair of like 1 pound clubs or even 2 pounds, which about as much as anybody needs, might run you like $100. But you can also make them if you're a little bit inclined, 2-liter bottle full of sand and jam a stick in there and some duct tape or something of that nature. You can make these yourself for very, very cheap. But it's a great way, low strength. It's still going to work the small muscles of your shoulders and also build flexibility at the same time. There's a great YouTube channel by a guy named Paul McGuire, and he shows all kinds of Indian club exercises. He has a full-on free. They're called Indian clubs. He does a full-on seminar that's on YouTube about what Indian clubs are, where they came from, what they're used for, how to use them, different types of clubs. Like there's the meals, or the really big, the super big Indian clubs, and then the smaller ones, which are the kind of the English design. They look like a bowling pin, essentially.
Yeah, and I posted a link to that. So guys,
Yeah, thank you.
take a look to the link that I posted.
Yep.
They're on Amazon, but they were the first link I found.
Yep. Yeah, and you can even find things like short baseball bats at a used sporting goods store for like $10 and use those. Um, you know, Depending on how creative you are, you can scrounge things probably in your garage and make something up. You don't need a lot of weight. In fact, I would strongly recommend that anybody starting out, I don't care how big you are, start out with 1 pound clubs and work that for a while, and then just go to like 2 pounders. I think they make up to 3 pounds, but even 3 pounds is starting to trigger more large muscle groups than they are the small muscle groups that SCA fighting really uses. Yes, wooden juggling pins would work. They look almost exactly the same. Like I said, if you're a little crafty, you can easily make a set. But and there's a lot of different things you can do with them, some of which looks really super cool and complicated, and some of which is just super simple. like swinging them, straight in front of you like this, all the way back behind you. It's hard to do with a laptop right in front of me, but you just swing them back and forth. And that does a lot to open up your shoulders and get those muscles limber and stretched. It's not a hard stretch, because somebody warned earlier about be careful about overstretching. Just think of it relaxed movement, and if it's all movement, because SCA fighting is all movement. So you're actually getting your conditioning.
And I want to jump in about stretches just for a second. Our
Sure.
muscles have what's called a stretch reflex. If you'll see people bend, like, oh, I'm going to stretch my legs, and then they bend like this. The reason when people see that, you're like, don't do that, is your muscles have what's called a stretch reflex.
Mhm.
Your muscles assume that you're falling or something bad is happening to you if you're doing this sudden pulling forward. Even if you think it's a gentle one, you're like, oh, look at me stretching. What you're teaching your muscles is, oh my God, there's a trauma about to happen. And they clench to try to stop you from falling or doing what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've learned is do a stretch, hold it for a short time, like about 12 seconds, stop the stretch. It lets your muscles relax rather. And then you start it again, and you can hold it for a little bit longer. But a lot of people are, I hold it for a minute at a time. And if you can, that's terrific if it's a gentle stretch. But for those of us who are learning, say coming back from a knee surgery, this is what they tell you to do. You stretch, and then you relax a little bit, and then you do the stretch again. And I just found out, this is so cool to me, so you guys get to hear it too. While muscles are long fibers, it's certainly true, they stretch, but when they compact, you're like, it's not like a long fiber, like an elastic band just sticking around in your arm. They have to slide into each other. There's a sheath surrounding them, and the fibers need to be able to slide into each other to take up less space in your arms, which is why you get the bulge. So that's why you want to do it slowly and gently. So there you go. I'm geeking out
That
on
is good. Yep. And there's one other thing too that I came across years ago that I really liked, especially as I was transitioning out of free weights, which I liked far better than cable machines or things like that, which is body weight exercises. There has been a great renaissance of body weight focused exercises of all kinds. And you can look up on YouTube, there's they call animal flow workouts. So you do things like bear crawls, and they've got all kinds of different stuff. And you'll look like, what you would see kindergartners doing as they're crawling across the floor in all kinds of respects. And it, from an adult stand, which is great for just physicality in general, but it builds flexibility, strength, and stamina all together in motion. And so there's more than I can go into now of describing different kinds of body weight motions, but you can get a lot in your whole body workout when you start doing those things, where you can work out your shoulders, your core, your hip flexors, your legs, all at the same time. So you can get a lot done in 10, 15 minutes of conditioning instead of taking an hour and a half, where you're isolating every group of muscles separately. So if you want bang for your buck without having to spend a lot of money, look into animal flow workouts and body weight exercises. I do recall reading, everybody knows Bruce Lee had a back injury, pretty severe back injury when he was younger. And I read into and found out what was going on. He actually used, it was an exercise called Good Mornings. And they're kind of like where you have your legs and you bend over and you kind of reach and touch the opposite toe and you go back and forth or something of that nature. And he was doing them with a weighted bar. And the weighted bar, I think, was like 80 pounds or something like that. And he strained his back, and he was in the hospital for a period of time, and even told that he wouldn't walk again, more than likely. But he came back after and reconditioned, and then he went, became famous into the movies and everything like that. But he said, that exercise without any weight is absolutely fine. There's no reason to add weights just to add weight. And that's where he got injured. So it's a good lesson. I was like learning from other people's mistakes more than my own, because I still make plenty, but take the advice of don't just add weight thinking you're getting more result because you've slapped additional weight on you.
Absolutely. And point of fact, if you slap on the weights, as Bruce Lee found out, you can do a lot of serious injury. what I like, Tristan, about your suggestion about this, again, not being part of a club, is you can do it at home when nobody is watching you except for your dogs, right? So
Yep.
you don't have to feel like you're a goof or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you only, and again, doing this just a few times a day. And when I say a few, I mean, pick five. Because
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it 5 times now. And that's the thing. People say, well, five doesn't count. But five is 5 times more than you're doing now. And then
Mm-hmm.
next week, add one more. And you know what? That's a 20% increase. People say, but it's just one. But it's a 20% increase. And that's a lot. And I know it's a lot because if they said, hey, Bess, you want a 20% raise at work? I would be like, that's a big raise. So that's how you know if it's a lot. You're like,
That's
okay.
true.
So
Now, so I think we've covered not really focusing so much on raw, pure strength. And certainly, if you're starting out fighting and you're small and you're like, I can't even lift this shield, I can't even hold this armor up. Absolutely. Some basic strength conditioning will absolutely suit you. So we're not saying don't do it. Just be careful not to get drawn into going down a deep rabbit hole of training for raw power when really SCA fighting needs a specialized kind of strength and conditioning.
and let's talk about that too, because depending on the sport that you're using or your weapon form, let's just go with sword and shield.
Mm-hmm.
A sword weighs on a bad day 3 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to move 3 pounds many times
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly in a short duration. If you're thinking of like, oh, I want to do singles fights, if you look at a singles bout, it lasts a minute, maybe a minute and a half. 15 or 20 if you're Bronis or Rongvalder, but they're not throwing blows. They're just, zenning out their opponents. So you don't need to be able to, be throwing a heavy weight around if you're just using, say, a sword, a 3-pound sword. You
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to move a frickin' 3-pound sword around. That's
Mm-hmm.
what you need to practice with. If your shield is 12 pounds, make sure you can use 12, you can move 12 pounds easily. You don't have to be curling with, like, I do 85 pounds once and then I'm done. Well, that's swell, but
Right.
that's not what we're all about. We're about lighter weights many times. So you've got to
That's
consider what
correct.
you're
And
using.
and that brings us to the second one, which is stamina. And I think stamina is, along with flexibility, probably the most overlooked uh, conditioning trait that we want to go for. Unfortunately, it can seem not as sexy as just, well, what am I benching? How much weight can I lift? Those numbers, when they get big, tend to sort of feed our ego. But because no one says, well, I can do bench press 20 pounds I can do 150 reps.
Yeah. Look at
No
me
one's
going.
impressed by how many reps. They only impressed by the number. So when you think of stamina, start thinking in terms of that. Like, imagine a fight going on for 10 minutes with your shield, holding your shield up for that amount without letting it sink down. And you'll notice this in practice. And when you do it, you can sort of test your stamina. And this is kind of goes back to original point of take stock where you are. Try to do a sparring match and have it go 10 full minutes and see if your shield sags or if you have trouble lifting it. Just to get a gauge of where you're at. And if it's like, well, I can do a minute or minute and a half, rather than saying when that minute and a half comes, I'm going to go get some water, I'm going to rest and put it down, realize, okay, I don't want this to happen in an actual tournament fight that goes 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So use that time for a little bit of conditioning where you can try to push yourself past holding that shield up. Now, that's not necessarily the best way to do the conditioning, but it's a way to take stock of where you're at. And so you can, go home and try lifting that shield up for a couple of minutes. There is an exercise, and over the years, I've had many people come to me and say, well, I'm gonna start fighting, but I need to get in some good conditioning first, or I'm gonna start martial art classes, but what can I do I need to train first before I come in.
I need to be in shape before I train to get in
And of
shape.
course, what I'll tell them is, okay, well, yeah, that's good. And then, absolutely, if you want to train before you come to practice, train before you come to class, that's great. Go ahead and do it. And then it's well, but I can't afford a gym membership, or I don't have room in my house, or the litany of excuses start to roll out. And I would always just kind of smirk and be like, okay, well, all right, well, we'll see you. If you do want to come to practice, I'll be here. We'll see you here. But I finally came up with what I call the no excuse workout. And this really is a good way to gauge yourself in terms of strength, in terms of stamina, even in terms of cardio and flexibility in one exercise. And you could write this in a marker on the back of an index card and memorize it. Like there's no equipment to buy. It doesn't take any time. You don't need any space. And all
Okay,
it is lay on the ground and get back up again. And you can do it at any speed. You can lay on your stomach, you can lay on your side or your back. All you have to do is get to your feet and lay back down on the ground for as long as you can do it, only with one rule. You go as fast, as slow as you want. You just cannot stop. And if you can go a minute and a half, you're doing pretty decently. If you can go 2 minutes, you're doing good. You can go beyond 2 minutes, you're doing really good. And I remember the first time I told this, son was like 15 years ago, and they said, that sounds easy. I'm going to go do that. And I get an email about 2 hours later. He said, I made it like a minute and a half, and wow, it sounded easy, but it's not easy. And
you can do a modified
hands to get
version of
up.
that.
It's not like there's any special form. Just use whatever you have to get back to your feet, and you'll find that it will work your hip flexors, your core, your shoulder muscles, even your neck. Trying to hold your head, lift your head up, it's gonna get neck, legs, the whole 9 yards. And a minute and a half goes by real slow as you're getting up and getting back down on the ground. So, I said, if anybody can't do that, they must be either in a wheelchair or locked in, a cage or something, because you can do it in a hotel room, your bedroom, a living room, and you'll do it less time than you spend in the bathroom every day.
There's a modified version of that too, Tristan, that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all the way down. Just go into a chair, sit in a chair, your desk chair at work, your sofa, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit and get up, and sit and get up. If for some reason, and it's okay to do halfway. If for example, going all the way to the ground is like, you're like, I can do 10 seconds. Okay, you can do
Mm-hmm.
one. So you might want to practice, do a halfway step of starting with a chair. It is okay to do small steps.
Absolutely.
So many people think they have to like fling themselves in an exercise like this. I would see people fling themselves to the ground, spring it up in the air 18 feet and then down again. And then they can't do it tomorrow, or they can only do it for 3 minutes. Slow and controlled is 100% okay. I cannot begin to emphasize baby steps. And, if you're not doing anything, baby steps are huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start doing more, it'll be okay. You can add some, you add 15 minutes, or add falling down going down to the ground 3 more times. 3. I don't know why I picked 3. 3 is a good number. But you can give that a go as well.
So yeah, the down and up has the great benefit of you don't need to spend $1 on fitness equipment. But it also has one other thing, and this is shared with virtually all of the body weight exercises, is because you're only using your body weight, there's a natural protection mechanism built in. You will have a very difficult time injuring yourself just by your body weight. And granted, you can do crazy things, try to do like handstands and stuff where you can strain your shoulders. Those are extreme gymnastic type conditioning. But for most of the stuff like crawls and hip switches and things like that, you're not going to get physically hurt. You may feel awkward because your flexibility in your hips isn't there, or something in your shoulders is not letting you do it. You got to do it slow, or you got to go from your knee, like with push-ups, going from your knees instead of your feet. All that's fine, but your body will tell you, okay, this feels like it's too much. And this is where you start getting used to listening to your body. And it's easy to listen to it then, and you'll get better at listening to it for the smaller things that's telling you it's not quite right. So that's kind of how it goes along. So with stamina, you really do want to focus on being able to perform for extended periods of time. Maybe if you like melees, you're thinking, if I go into a 90-minute res battle, I don't want to do half of it. I want to do the whole thing, right? And I mean, how many Penzics have we been at where, people say, well, I'll go in for 1 res or 2, and then that's all I've got. And I'm, like, well, you can do it that way, but that's your body telling you, here's where your limit are. We're talking about how do we push our limits to make sure we can have the fun we want to have, and fight as long as we want to fight and not run out of gas. And stamina is where you're going to run out of gas in terms of your muscles, which I suppose brings us to the next one, which is cardio, running out of gas in terms of just your breathing and your heart being able to pump and get blood to where it needs to go. Do you want to start off with the cardio subject, Vess, or do you want me to start with it?
Yeah, I was looking for my pen to take notes. So
Oh,
cardio is super terrific. It's great just to help like you feel better about yourself, being able to do everyday things better. Like it's terrific to be able to be better at the SCA, which is really the focus. But you know what? It's also terrific to be able to walk up and down stairs without huffing and puffing, or to be able to carry your groceries in and out the house without worrying about it. Or if you have kids, being able to run after your kids. So cardio comes into play in a lot of ways.
mhm.
One of the ways people will gas out with cardio is, and I've seen this at Pennsic, so this is what I was looking for my pen for, is that they have not adequately eaten beforehand. Now, a lot of people say, and I'm one of them, I can't eat before a battle, but I can eat 2 hours before a battle. So before my armor goes on, I make sure I have a meal. And I'm not just talking about like a protein bar with a couple hundred calories. You've got to have something substantial in your body. So God help me, in the 80s when I was alive, but some of you were not, there was this thing we called carb loading. And it's actually a thing. Your muscles run on sugar. Essentially, it's sugar. And things like pasta and other good stuff is stored in your body when you're going into a tournament, or if you're going into a war or a melee and you want to have that, you've got to make sure you've been eating well leading up to it. So your body literally physically has the reserves to do this, to do the stuff that you want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing about cardio. Make sure you eat, because people think they have bad cardio, but really they just haven't eaten.
Yeah, and to add on to that one too, because I remember the whole carb loading craze that kind of went into the 80s.
Hey,
And then kind of almost the next generation found out that carb loading, because the body turns those carbs into sugars, which is a great energy source short term, has a pretty steep drop off, and it happens in about 2 hours, 2 to 2.5 hours after you eat them. So what they found out was that protein has a longer burn, and protein and fat are longer term energy sources. So if you know you're going to be fighting, say from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and because you don't want to eat right before you go into battle, which is a good tip, you don't want to load up on a big meal and put your armor on and go running out there. But if you eat it, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, you want to make sure by 2 o'clock you're not falling off that cliff, that energy cliff. So
yeah, so a combo of like
yeah,
carbs and oils and protein, and
yeah,
and protein will release the blood or the sugar into your bloods more slowly. And for those of you who are diabetic, it won't spike your blood sugars.
hmm,
So it's just, there's something to be aware of it.
yeah.
People say, what is cardio and how do I figure it out? So here's a mathematical formula for it. Ready? Get your pen. It's 220 minus your age times 80%. So when you're working to cardio, if you're thinking about your heart rate, that's the most that your heart should be working at.
Mm-hmm.
And 220 minus your age times 60 would be the low edge of what you're looking for in cardio. You'd like to keep your heart rate somewhere in there to receive a cardiovascular benefit, the best. But if you've never done anything before, the best cardio thing you can do is get up and walk around the block. Because lots of us in this day, we drive. I work 1.2 kilometers for work. So what is that? Like a little over half a mile. You know what I do? I drive my car because I got to carry my laptop and my lunch and my purse. So I don't walk. There's not a lot of walking that we do in everyday life just to get your heart moving. So just getting up and walking around the block is a good start. And don't mock it, because it really is a good start. So that's the kind of thing that you want to do. I would suggest that you wear a pair of running shoes, because they're designed, to help you absorb impact. That's what they do. And if you look at the heel of a running shoe, I used to sell running shoes when I was a kid. The wider the heel is, for when you actually run, you do a heel strike first. The wider the heel is, the more shock absorption it will have, and it will supply you with some stability. When you look at a shoe, you would like something solid coming over your foot to keep the ball of your foot on top of the sole, and that just helps you to stay on your shoe so you don't fall off your shoe. But you don't have to. You can, I don't even wear flip flops if that's what you've got. Just go out and do it. And then once you've done it for a while, where you kind of go, walking around the block is cheap and doesn't suck, you could try running half a block. And by running, I mean kind of going a little bit faster than jogging or than walking. And people say this is stupid and it's not enough, but it works. This is how you build up to it. Again, if you try to run 5 miles on your first date, you're not going to do it. You're going to feel like, well, if you're like me, you're going to feel like a loser because you can't run 5 miles when you've never run 5 miles before. Oh my God, how far is frickin' 5 miles? I've only gone around the block. It's okay to do it in baby stages.
Mm-hmm.
And to make sure, a good way to make sure that you're at a good cardiovascular workout for you is that you can still talk, or if you're plugged in, you can sing along with whatever music you've got. I use music, whatever music you've got in your ears. And I will say for me, I cannot work out without music in my ears. The beat helps me keep going. But if you want to listen to a podcast, that's great. If you want to listen to the radio, or if you just zen out and you look at the trees and listen to the birds, whatever works for you is the right way of doing it. Don't work out like me, plugged into music, if it does not work for you. The best workout is the workout that you're going to do. And I said, run around the block or mow your lawn. If you've got a lawn, pushing a lawnmower back and forth is working out, and now you're working your body. You're pushing something, so you're using your upper body as well. That can also be a cardiovascular workout. If it's not fall now, but in the fall you can rake leaves. Again, nothing involving a gym.
I want to jump back a little bit to mention something that I found very invaluable, learned a while back. Because some days I would, in the same physical condition, some days felt like I could just go fight for hours, and other days, like even a week after, I'd feel like half an hour I was just like trudging. I'd run out of energy, and even though I was eating the same, or so I thought. But what will happen? It's not necessarily a cardio issue. What it is a blood thickness issue. If you go and eat, and there are certain foods which will thicken your blood. So if you eat, and I'm trying to remember some of the ones, they're like broccoli. I know a lot of people hate broccoli, but there are foods that if you eat it, it tends to thicken your blood. When your blood is thick, your heart has a harder time pumping it through. Now, when you need it pumped through quickly and it's trying to pump gel, it goes slowly. So another thing to do, not only eat 2 hours prior to fighting or earlier, but about half an hour before you start to fight, start drinking water, because water will start to thin your blood. It gets it so it's easier to move through your heart smoothly. And that, when I finally hit on that one, and it was recommended to me by a runner, a housemate of mine who was a runner, I had those days were always I could go fight for 2-3 hours without a problem. And I never felt like I was trudging it, or my heart was pounding, or I could, feel it. It's a blood thickness thing. And that definitely is a diet control issue.
Absolutely. I'd actually like to add to that, Tristan, because you've raised a good point. So I'm a blood donor, and I always play this game when I go and give blood. Like, how fast can I bleed? Like, will I break my record today? One of the things that the phlebotomist, the blood person, told me, I said, oh, I'm slow today giving blood. And she said to me, well, it's because you're not very hydrated. I said, but I drank a lot today and I'm peeing, because I thought that was hydrated. And she said, well, actually, although you're peeing, y'all need to know about that. She said it takes more than that for your body, the tissues in your body, to absorb the fluids. And if you don't have enough salt and the stuff that's in Gatorade, essentially salts and potassium in your body, then you evaporate the water or the fluids out of your body quite quickly. And so you're not retaining the water. It's just coming out of your body.
Hmm.
So some people may have noticed at Penzic that they love chips. And it's a combination. You're like, I really need French fries or potato chips. Uh, as I understand it, and I am not a doctor, but I have had somebody who knows stuff about nutrition share this with me. If you're eating French fries, there's potassium in potatoes, and there's always the salt on that. And that's the sort of thing that your body is craving. If you take potassium pills, they tap out at 99 milligrams, but one good sized banana has 400 milligrams in it. So eat a banana because it has other good stuff for you. And
Hmm.
it's more than, yes, it's more than potassium pills. And yeah, pickles are super great afterwards because they're in a brine as well. So that's all really terrific for you afterwards. So I just wanted to add to what Tristan was saying,
Hmm.
especially with Penzic and the wars coming up, because we're in our houses and they're all air conditioned and we don't really think about hydrating. Make sure you're drinking well in advance, and then after you've eaten, because blood will also be going to your stomach to aid in the digestion. It'll be pulled out of like veins and arteries and stuff to help move things along to make the fluids. You're going to need that as well. So that's a terrific point, Tristan.
Yep. And then to jump into what I found, this I did personally, so I can attest to it. One of the best ways to increase your cardio fitness is through called interval training, and
Oh
that
God, I love it. Oh,
it is. And I tried it 1 year before Gulf Wars many years ago, and being up here in Minnesota, I couldn't get outside, so all I did was get a bicycle, like a stationary bike, and I would get you. Basically, the theory is you go fast for about 30 seconds, like as fast as you can go to get your heart rate way up, and then you kind of take it easy for about a minute. And there are different formulas. It's 30 seconds on, 30 seconds rest, but you go faster, slower. And I do that. I started out for about 20 minutes, and then I did it for about 30 minutes. Then I did it for about 40 minutes. You really don't need to go above about 35 or 40 minutes. And this is the cool part about interval training. Now, runners will do this. They'll line up like long distance runners. They'll line up the whole team, and the way that they'll do it is the guy in the back. They'll all go at kind of a trot, a faster than a trot, but not a full run. And the guy in the back will sprint up to the front of the line. And then when he gets there, the next guy at the back will sprint up. So they're going sprint, 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 and then jog, 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 jog for a while, and then sprint. When I got to Gulf Wars, I remember there being a resurrection battle. And I was like, oh, here's my chance to try. I want to see how good my 3 months of doing that. I think I did it every other day for just 30 minutes. We'll do for a full what I thought was a 60-minute battle. And so I grabbed my spear and I'm like, I'm going to trot up. I'm not walking up to the line. I'm going to run up there. I'm going to fight as much as I can. When I die, I'm going to come trotting back and I'm going to trot right back to the line. I didn't want to take any breaks. And so I'm fighting along and fighting along and I'm fighting along. And I'm like, boy, this is going pretty well. We got to be near the end of this battle. And I didn't run out of gas. My breathing wasn't labored. I mean, I felt like I could just do this all afternoon. And I got killed, and I was going back, and I come trotting up to a marshal. I'm like, just out of curiosity, like, how much time is left in the battle? It's like, well, it's a 90-minute battle. We got about 5 minutes left. And I'm like, this was 90 minutes. Like, I didn't stop for 90 minutes because of those even brief interval training sessions built up my heart rate very effectively. Um, and
and
there's a
I
million ways you can do it. If you don't like running because it hits your knees, which a lot of people don't, there's many ways you can do it. All the way from burpees, which were probably the most despised exercise on the face of the planet. But if you want to get on a rowing machine, if you want to get on a recumbent bicycle, or even just go bicycling, which is easy on your knees, anything you can go hard for 30 seconds or so and then down for about 30 seconds or a minute, and then hard. And so you'll get so much out of that for a condensed amount of time.
Absolutely, and I've posted a list to or a link to the University of Harvard article on what is this intensity, and we refer to it as HIITS, HIITS, high interval intensity training.
Mm-hmm.
And the all the stuff I've been reading and the docs that I've been seeing on it really do say that you can get the cardiovascular advantage of like an hour steady on say an elliptical
Mhm.
in 15 or 20 minutes doing your hits. And you
Mhm.
can, and you stagger it for yourself. You go hard. If you have to do hard, 10 seconds or maybe 15 seconds and rest for 45 to start. You do it like a really short time, like 15 minutes
Mhm.
is more than enough to start working on this. And then gradually the intensity part you increase, but you
Mhm.
never have to really, you don't have to do like an hour of this. In fact, I think frankly you would die if you did it.
I think when I read it, it said if you go more than 40 minutes, you're just
You're
wasting.
yeah, you've gone overboard doing it. Now I'm going to say the slow and steady stuff that I do, there are advantages to that as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So so it's either whatever works for you. The best exercise that anybody can do is the thing that works for you. Uh,
Mhm.
there is not a hope in hell that I can play tennis or that I would want to play tennis, but I'm really happy just plugged into the elliptical
Sure.
for an amount of time. And
Mhm.
when you're, it's while we're talking about fitness goals, it's important before you start or shortly after you started, you define what fitness is for you.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, it never freaking ends. And you're like, I've been doing this for 30 years and I am not in shape yet. But so for me, my cardiovascular fitness is I always say, the woods battle is 90 minutes, including holds, unless they're general holds. So, and then I have to walk up the hill to get to, wherever the go part is, or the rendezvous station. Then I have to walk down the hill. So I go 90 plus like 15. So I got to be able to do 105 minutes. I can do 105 minutes. I could, if I wanted to, start pushing 200 minutes on the elliptical,
Mhm.
but at that point, I have to acknowledge I have now changed my fitness goals and I might feel discouraged because, you know, in 5 years from now, I'm doing 200 minutes and then, well, then what do you do? Well, I guess I could do 250 minutes or something crazy.
Mhm.
But really, I want to be in shape for the entirety of the woods battle for the 90 minutes. What are you getting into shape for? You might say, I want to be able to fight in a tournament and I never really want to do melees. Well, then you don't need to do the kind of stuff that I'm doing. For you, probably the hit stuff that Tristan was talking about is better. Because if you think about it, a tournament is kind of like you go out, you fight, you fight, you fight, you fight, you fight. There could be pauses in the fights because we do back out, but then you wait for the next time they call your name. So now you're sitting around waiting, and then you've got to go like stink because you're in a bout. And you don't have to go all out, but now it's your whole body is engaged. And that might be better if you're more interested in being a tourney fighter. So when you think about it, how long is a tourney? Well, I need to be able to do 6 bouts of about 3 or 4 minutes over the course of 2 hours. What would you need to be able to do? You absolutely need to be able to hold your shield for a total of that. And you need to be able to hold your shield just as high the last 3 or 4 minutes as you did the first 3 or 4 minutes, which were 2 freaking hours ago, and now you're tired. So
Mhm.
it's super important that you know where you want to go and what you want to do. So set your goals so that you know when you're there. And then
And I
all
wanted to add in, there's one mindset thing to address here too, and that is it's easy for your mind to think, well, this is my body, this is the way it is. I might be able to get a little edge of performance, maybe a percentage or two here or there. Absolutely not true. I just looked this up. The world record for skin diving is almost 12 minutes of somebody holding their breath as they are diving down under the surface of the water. 12, imagine holding your breath for almost 12 minutes. Like that's what a body can do when you train it to do something.
right.
It can well outside of normal parameters, but that takes time and it takes intent.
And if
So
you're thinking that's an athlete, that was an athlete. But I was listening to an interview about the new, I think it's the new Avatar movie, and they go underwater, and it was Kate Blanchett had to, and she's just one of us. She's a freaking actress. She's not an athlete. She ended up learning how to hold her breath for 6 minutes.
mhm.
So in case you're thinking like ordinary people can't do it, we can. this,
By the way, and I remember years ago trying to see how quickly I could learn to hold my own breath. Of course, I wasn't diving, I wasn't in a pool, wasn't doing an activity. But I think when I started, it was about 35 seconds or 40 seconds. Within, I think, about a week and a half, I was over 2 minutes. So your body will start to adapt fairly quickly. So don't let your brain tell you, well, I'm not getting very far, or I can't really do this, or my body's not going to adapt. It will. If you call on it to do it, it will do its best. It'll take maybe a little time, but I think it'll happen quicker than you think if you could stick to a decent, fairly disciplined, regular schedule. And even if it's doing 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, you do that 5 times, 10 times a day, you're getting a lot of conditioning in. But it's not all in one dose, so it doesn't feel so intimidating or so oppressive.
I'd like to add to that. And
Mhm.
actually, I'd like to add to that and add one other thing. It is important, whether we'll be talking about breathing, and we all know it's important to breathe in a fight. We all know there are times we don't breathe in a fight. So,
Mhm.
practicing using your body when you have forgotten to breathe is also an important consideration. So, I one of the YouTube boxer guys I follow talks about practicing doing stuff while not breathing because, like it or not, it's going to happen. I want to
Mhm.
address a viewer comment that we talked about and Tristan talked about earlier about every day we have fluctuations. Sometimes, 100% for me today may not be 100% for me tomorrow or the day after. And that can change from hormones. If you have a uterus and you're going through weird ass cycles with your estrogen and your hormones. Men also have hormone cycles, not as extreme as as uterus people do, but men have them as well. But also how often you sleep, how often you've eaten, what your mental state is. So sometimes I'm in the gym and like yesterday, I was like, I'm a fucking goddess. Look at me go. I am rocking this. I'm doing level 6 because, intensity and elevation. And I'm doing like an 8.59 mile. Look at me. I'm terrific. And then the next day, and I may be talking from recent experience, I'm like, Jesus Christ, if I can do a 10-minute mile today at, a 4 and a 4 elevation and intensity, just freaking let me finish this for the love of God. And it is true that the days that I am not, I'm not doing a level 6, my personal records every day, I could feel that, oh, geez, I'm having a bad day. But I'm giving 100% in the days that I'm not always at a personal record. And Bronis talks about this guy, I don't know, his name probably begins with an L and ends with a Shenko or something, uh, who talks,
Lomachenko.
okay, who says you don't have to do when you're working out, you don't have to hit personal bests or personal records every day. It's okay to not blast yourself every practice. You go and you just do it on a regular basis. Every once in a while, you say, I'm going to go hard today. Meh, okay. That's when you start pushing yourself. I call it leveling up. But you don't have to try to level up every single day. So those are the things I just needed to add to a comment earlier.
Absolutely. The overall goal obviously is to push your boundaries farther out. But you don't get there by just blasting yourself, trying to shoot yourself like with a rocket, past them every single time. Um, Slow and steady is what wins the race when it comes to conditioning. And I know I've made that mistake myself in the past. As as younger, in your exuberance, you think, oh, I'm going to win the battle by winning it here in the gym, and I'm going to be stronger. You train smarter, and you get better results without injuries, without and tear down this myth too, the no pain, no gain thing.
Well, that's bullshit.
Absolute BS. If you train to the point where you're in pain, even with that muscle soreness, your mind will say, I don't want to do that again. And it will be easier to sit back and watch a movie and eat a pizza than it will be to go and do some conditioning. So make conditioning your friend, not your enemy,
And
by not making yourself miserable doing it.
and the pain that you feel, usually people feel this say when they've lifted a lot of weights. It's micro tears in,
Mhm.
notice I pointed to your bicep, but it's micro tears in whatever muscle is sore. And as your body is repairing those micro tears, you're building muscle. But you can also build muscle without those micro tears and without the sore. And they're called micro tears, but son of a bitch, they can hurt.
Oh
So
yeah.
don't do that. Slow and steady, and then you're comfortable, because it's not just that you can't work out the next day, you can't live your life the next day. And I say the next day because there's delayed onset DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. I don't feel it today when I leave the gym. I feel, oh, I'm terrific. Look at me. I'm a lifting goddess. But tomorrow, putting the dog's bowl of food down hurts me. I can't live my life like that because, like, oh, lifting my water bottle because I lifted too hard in the gym. That's not cool. Why would I want to do that to myself? You're not in competition with anybody except yourself. You're just trying to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. It doesn't matter what I am telling you guys what I do, but you're not in competition with me. And somebody posted that, I don't know, they deadlift like 250 pounds. Dude, I can't move 250. If I'm lucky, I'm not even telling you how much I can do if I'm lucky, but that's okay because I'm not in competition with you. I am my competition. No matter what the person next to me is doing in the gym or whatever I'm saying to you guys now, don't be me, be you. That's the number one important thing.
Sure. And that kind of brings us into our fourth category that we wanted to talk about, which is flexibility. And I've got a few general comments to make, but I wanted to cover this one too, because I think it is probably the single most overlooked, if not somewhat reviled conditioning part. I know I particularly always hated stretching.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, everybody will tell you you should stretch out before you do your athletic activity because you're going to lower the amount of injuries you're going to have. And of course, being young and nearly immortal, thinking our bodies are ready for anything, it's easy to overlook some mild stretching to get things warmed up before you actually go out and do your sport, do your activity, or do your physical conditioning. It's important to get that flexibility in there and take stock of what your flexibility is. And with SCA fighting, I think the shoulders and the hip flexors are the most important things for us to keep an eye on when it comes to what our flexibility is, and to expand on it and to keep it limber, because the shoulder surgery I had was because I was not stretching adequately. And I regret having the surgery because a good PT could have taken care of it without going under the knife, but that's another story. But had I been stretching properly, I would have avoided that whole mess. So there are ways to do those stretches with body weight movements. It's very yoga like a dynamic yoga, not just a hold a pose yoga, but being able to take your joints through a range of motion smoothly, dynamically, and at a lot of different angles. Because that's the one thing about SCA fighting, it can be kind of funky, the angles that we put our limbs and shoulders into. Maybe not so much with Sword and Shield, but if you like over the top stuff, now you get your elbow over your shoulder. And I've heard a lot of criticisms about you never want to have your elbow above your shoulder, but sometimes in fighting spear or fighting polearm, you get in a position where you go to an inverted block. So now your shoulders you're going to be moving all over the place. And so that's an important part to get those shoulders flexible. That's why I like the Indian club stuff. And by the way, I posted a link to the Paul McGuire. He did a kind of a little mini seminar and he filmed it and put it on YouTube, which is great. It's only about 35-40 minutes, but he goes through all kinds of ways, and you can watch him do it and watch how his shoulders open and close as he brings the club through the motion around his head. And you'll be like, that's sword work all day long. Well, that's where it came from. It conditioned swordsmen in India, for thousands of years. It was a great tool that they used for building that shoulder flexibility and strength with those small controller muscles. That's the other key. And we talked about that earlier too. But within the flexibility, resist. And I think as people get into it without being mentored correctly, they think, oh, I'm going to take my limb and I'm just going to stretch it and pull it as much as I can right away. Don't do that. Do it soft. Think of dynamic movement. It's best to warm up the limb first with some movements, warm it up a bit, and then stretch it gently, and then back. It's like a rubber band. You're not just going to take a rubber band and pull it all the way taut because it could break. think of your muscles the same way. You want to stretch it, relax it, and you want to stretch both directions. Every limb that we have goes at least two directions, where you extend one way and then contract the other way. So go all the way through the range of motion and back. Get a decent stretch, but don't go nuts. Just don't go nuts with your body, because especially with your legs and hips, it's easy to pull something that you didn't want to um, with those. Anything you wanted to throw in on the flexibility or stretching?
Yeah, make sure you do it on both sides.
Yes.
So it sounds funny. As some of you may know, I tore my bicep off my arm a couple of years ago, and about a dozen years ago, I damaged my rotator cuff. So I was given exercises to do for both injuries for stretching the ligaments and tendons and muscles on both sides. But I do it with my other arm as well, because now I know good exercises for it. So I would encourage everybody to don't just think, oh, well, my sore, or say you're using shield, oh, my shield stays here. It goes back and forth a little bit. I don't have to exercise on that side. Or my left leg is tight, so I stretch my left leg, but not my right leg. I would encourage everybody to work on both sides. You will probably find, and it won't be the same, one limb is easier to stretch, especially if you've been an SCA fighter for a long time, because we do different things with our body parts. You might find that your sword is used to coming back, but maybe your shield doesn't go so far back because you're used to maybe blocking this way. It goes down, it goes up, but going backwards, you might feel like a tug or something in your arm. So there are multiple exercises that you can find online, but if you're specifically wondering what I was told, literally for my rotator cuff, but also my bicep, because it stretches everything in there, I put this hand, the good hand, on my shoulder, and I just hold it in front of me, and I just see, I just pull it across, and I just hold it. I'm holding it for a few seconds. That's all I have to do. Then I just bring it over the top and just pull it, and I'm pulling it behind my head, and I can feel a stretch all down my arm with that. Now, if you don't have bad tendon or bad muscles and bad rotator cuffs, you may not feel the stretch as much, and that's okay, but you're still stretching it. The other thing to do is up and behind, and that stretches everything in here. Trust me, I can feel that in here right now, and I do it on both sides. So I really encourage you to stretch, because I would say in the SCA, we all know somebody, now you all know me, who have had shoulder injuries or shoulder strains. And speaking of which, don't BS. If you're injured, actually don't fight, and wait a goodly amount of time. Don't think, oh, I skipped a practice, so it's been 2 weeks since I got hurt. Soft tissue injuries take 4 to 6 weeks to heal. Don't think that you're Superman or a woman, because I'm not. So don't be me. Don't go back. If you go back too early, you'll be out longer. Listen to your body. You think you're terrific. You think you're Superman because you or woman because Wonder Woman because you're a gym rat. Well, you're not. And you take time to heal. Even if you don't want to take time to heal, you take time to heal. So don't be bass. Learn from my mistakes.
Yep, absolutely.
God help us all.
It's the easiest thing in the world to kind of that hurts a little bit, but I'll go with it.
Okay,
And a lot of this is going to be getting into feeling what's going on with your body, knowing the difference between discomfort and pain, which is going to be, a mild ache versus, okay, something's injured, something's not right. And this goes back to that getting into your body and being able to listen to what it's telling you. Because there is some stuff you get a little bruised up. Okay, that aches, but it ain't going to stop the show. But to push something that is more than that can lead to a serious injury, or push you to the point where you might be permanently or semi-permanently injured, or take a long time to recover from. So your body is going to be your race car, and if it's stuck in the garage, you're going to be hating life. So just be careful with it. And that actually brings up something I wanted to cover that sort of covers into the strength, but it covers into the training too, because I know that people, especially as they get fighting for a while, a couple of years, and they see an explosive fighter, somebody who's quick, they're just fast, and they think, okay, that's not just strength, that's explosive strength, and I want to train for that explosive strength. And many years ago, they came up with the term plyometrics to reflect the type of training where you're building explosive power. And that could be from, for example, a speed skater who wants to be able to load up the weight on their leg and explode off of it to go back and forth as they're skating, like a hockey player. It could be a basketball, somebody who wants to be able to explosively jump and get a lot of air because it's a short, powerful, fast motion. And a lot of people, because they jump into workouts quickly, they say, I want to go right to those. How about I go right to the explosive power part? And the problem with it is it takes a certain baseline of physical muscle conditioning, strength, and even stamina to be able to do that without straining your muscles. That's where you're at the biggest danger of having a notable strain or worse to your muscle, or a full-on tear. So I wanted to include in this show talking about how to build up for that plyometric type training. And that is, for example, if you wanted to do a standard basketball jump, do at least 2 months worth of decent, good squats all the way down, all the way back up, and do it nice and slowly. You want to build the strength of that tissue and the connectors that the tissue attaches to on either end of the muscle tissue to your bone, to make sure that when you do that explosion, you're not going to be tearing it. You might even need to do 3 months or 4 months, depending on where you start from. Just go into it really carefully. When you do start it, don't go balls to the wall, 100% explosion right off the bat. Go at about 20 to 30% intensity, but think explosive. You're going to move from static to motion smoothly, and then go to like 40 or 50%. And then 60 to maybe 70% and up. Just be super careful with it. And I believe me, I went through the same thing. I wanted to be faster. I wanted to be more explosive. Fortunately, I had enough physical conditioning that when I tried it, I did not injure myself, but I've seen people do it just because they're trying to explode too quickly.
Right. And I posted a link. It was to WebMD, but it talks about what plyometrics are. So you have now a place to go to look, and just you can read up on a little bit about it. Part of that is also proprioception, where your body is in time and space, and that is related to balance. And so if you want to be explosive, if you're jumping, say, you often see people like jumping onto a box, oh, it's 24 inches, look at me jump on the box, or they're just making big, fast motions. You have to know where your body is in space. And for proprioception, you can practice again at home to just balance. It really is, it's a fancy way of saying really super balance, and your body knows what your body is doing. I'm currently doing it as part of the rehab for my knee, so I can share with you the exciting proprioception exercises I'm doing. I am standing on my left leg, just standing. And you're like, well, that's really easy. I can just stand on my left leg. Look at me. Yeah, now do it with your eyes closed. And if you can do it with your eyes closed, then you start moving your arms out to the side. And you will find eventually it becomes remarkably difficult. You're trying to do it for an extended length of time, but you'll also find it works all those muscles in your body, in both your knee and ankles and your thighs, your quads, your hams. It's using all of those things. And it's a super fun exercise to do. But actually it is. And it was really hard at first, and I like it now.
That's a great tip. One of the things too you can consider, because it comes to the mind usually because people that want to do this and they want to build that explosiveness, They think in order for me to build intensity in my workout, I should be going faster. I should be trying to be more explosive. I want you to try something. Let's say you're doing just a body weight squat and you go down and you come back up. Rather than going faster, I want you to take twice as long to do that squat and see what the intensity feels like. And then do it half that speed, like do a 20%, do a squat that takes you 10 seconds down and 10 seconds all the way back up. And then see which is more intense, the squat you were doing originally or that one. And I had read years ago that there was a 70-year-old man over in China somewhere, and they're talking about this guy was in phenomenal physical condition. He does one push-up and one squat a day, and it takes him 60 minutes to do each one.
God.
So now we're drifting towards the opposite of plyometric, which is isometric training, where you are almost static. You're not moving, but you're resisting both directions. Like let's say I was practicing to extend my sword arm, and I just hold it as though I was extending it, but I'm firing both the muscles that extend my arm and that contract them, and they're pulling against one another. So you're not even moving, but because you have strength going both directions, you're actually at that point of your muscle range of motion, you're building strength at that exact point. And then you can do it kind of at every position. All he was really doing is doing an almost exactly isometric exercise at every point along the way by spending so much time under that stress. So it's a way to build strength. There are those who have stated in the past, and this was a school of thought for some time, that there are such thing as a fast twitch muscle. Because in order to try to explain how are some people so quick and explosive and other people are not. This theory kind of had a whole bunch of holes poked in it. There is no specific tissue you could look at under a microscope to say, well, this is fast twitch muscle and this is not. Really, it is the expression of strength, and it's done when it is trained where your body is used to sending the signals to your muscles very quickly, and they learn to respond very quickly, but they have that base level of strength in order to respond to the signal that your brain is giving them. So don't think that you need to do all of your training for explosiveness or to build this non-existent quick twitch muscle, because that's not really the case. You do want to have a good level of athleticism and base physical capability, and then have a portion of your training where you practice mental speed of brain goes to your hand or brain goes to your leg and tells you where to to move quickly. And that is a part that can be built as well. And you could consider that part of this, which is the physical conditioning part, because now you're training your neuromuscular system and your, the electrical signals going through your central nervous system to get to the muscles as part of that training. It's not just building muscle tissue or stretching, muscles out, that kind of thing. So, I like Lori's post. Is slow and smooth is way more intense than fast. With all of your training, if there was one thing I could stress more than anything else, focus on smooth. Focus on smooth execution, and it doesn't matter how fast you do it. Speed will come when that smooth comes. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That is absolutely true. If you train for speed and you lack smoothness, you're just going to be flailing. So focus on this, on good form and executing smoothly, and the speed will come naturally.
One thing that people, when they talk about speed or they talk about, fast hands and stuff, it's may not necessarily be people that, wow, he's so fast. People talk about Rongvalder and he says, I'm not fast, I'm slow. Well, what he does have is good hand-eye coordination. And you can train your hand-eye coordination. And again, don't have to be in the gym for that. One of the things, I follow this guy out on YouTube. His name is Shane, and I'm about to post a link to him. He says he gives you some exercises that you can do with a tennis ball, and it works your hand-eye coordination. And essentially what I do is I throw a tennis ball against a wall. I do it here in the house, and I just throw it and I catch it. But I throw it from further away, so I have more time to react. And as I get faster at it or better at it, I move closer to the wall. Then I start moving along the wall, so I could learn to react to it. And there is this thing that people say works, but I could never make it work because apparently I have terrible reaction time. It's called a reaction ball. It's a ball with like little bulbs on it, and it's bouncy, and you throw it on the ground and it goes wherever the hell it wants, and you're supposed to be able to react fast and get it. I mostly I just look stupid and could never do it. But it might work for some of you to try working on your, your hand-eye and your reaction time.
Sure.
I never did that.
Well, and you bring up a great point. And, if you look up Lomachenko, some of his very innovative training methods that I believe his father implemented, and they refer to him, they nickname him the Matrix, or there was another name of basically a super modern training. And it's not just the strength part; it is building the hand-eye coordination, the mental processing speed. I think you could lump all these into training your body, because your mind and how it executes and how it talks to your muscles is part of how your body functions. And so I would put it alongside the stamina, the cardio, all that stuff.
There is a show on PBS called Trust Me, I'm a Doctor. It's out of England. And they were actually in Montreal working with a boxer, working on innovative techniques. And essentially, I'm going to dumb this down. They just put a bunch of sensors upon the wall and they would randomly flash. And they were just getting him to hit the sensors as they were going. And they had them for feet as well. And he was really good, man. And as a boxer, you're in close. I mean, so he had to be responding very well. But I also know there's things that we people can buy that, you can, that replicate it. They're similar to, I know because I was looking for them online. So there are things that you can do that will randomly flash numbers. I know Sir Alfwin has a bunch of numbers, like a grid, maybe up 1 through 9 on the wall. And she has a random number generator app on her phone that just sings out numbers, and she just has to touch the numbers on her wall. And again, not expensive, easy to do, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely it does. There's a many different ways of taking your body and enhancing it so that it suits our sport better. As with anything, your base of athleticism, whether you play tennis or whether you do swimming or anything that builds your base level of athletics up, will help FCA fighting. But that said, there are some specialty things I think that will take it, that will suit it much better. As always, I would say focus on the legs. Really, and Bronis has got some great stuff that he shows on his Sunday Fighting Practice, and we've got all that stuff up on our YouTube channel about using the agility ladders and doing leg conditioning stuff so that your movement becomes really good and tight. If you've got good movement, it saves so much of your shoulder and your arms for having to make up for bad movement by having good hands. And I just can't say enough about, you build a house from the foundation up, and a fighter's foundation are his legs and feet, and how you can move your body. And if that goes well, be on balance, be in good posture that you can fire from any position, and perceiving that range and things. And this is a great bridge into the next step, which would be, some of the material we've already covered with. Now, what do you do at practice? How do you take this to a PAL? How do you take this into drills that you work with a partner, where your eyes are perceiving range, and now you're executing with your body what you've trained it to do, whether it's respond with a shot or respond with shifting or changing angles, all of that stuff. This is really, I think, the fundamental part of preparing yourself to do those things. And I'll just lastly say that don't ever think that you need to have a certain fairly high level of these things before you can go to a practice. You don't. Go and have fun and go and fight, but just realize that if you improve these things, your fighting will improve very quickly, as opposed to just going and sparring or going to practice all by itself. You'll get great returns on it, I promise you.
And of course, the best exercise for fighting, I mean, we've given you some helpful tips on, you can do this. the best way to get better at fighting is to fight. These are all great exercises to keep you healthy. And healthy is like so important. Being in good shape just for like carrying your groceries to your car from the grocery store, or walking upstairs to your apartment, say, or walking your dogs. It's good to be in shape. But really taking this stuff and applying it to practice, you can do everything that we've talked about, the stretching and the hand-eye coordination, and have great cardio, and be able to hold a 5-pound weight, all that cool stuff. But if you're not out there actually fighting on a regular basis, then your fighting won't get better no matter how much you practice outside the practice place, ring, area, field, whatever. So practice too.
Yep. So we're getting near our time, so we're going to be wrapping it up here. This has been a very fun discussion. I guess one last tip that I did not think of earlier, but I do want to add in: find a workout buddy if you can. If you find somebody that will be with you, your workouts will be more fun. You will keep each other honest and not let one another cheat and say, "Well, tonight I'm going to sit home and have some ice cream," and rather than do my workout. If you can, I really like the go off into a spare room for a minute or two periodically during the day, especially if you're one of those people that works in a chair and you sit there all day long. Even put a timer on your phone, like every hour, have it just go bing. It's like, okay, get up. I'm going to do some squats, stretch out a little bit, then sit back down. Break your sitting in a chair too much rhythm, and add in little bits here and there. It really does a lot. Of course, it's hard to have a workout partner for that, but you can do it in a way that you don't feel like you're giving up valuable time on your busy schedule. You can always work this stuff in.
All right. So guys, I don't think I'm going to be back on Coach's Corner again until after Pennsic. I hope to see a ton of you at Pennsic, hope both on the field and across the field. For those of you who don't know, I wear red and I have a fleur-de-lis with a lion's head on it. Look for me, hit me. I'll try to hit you. Have fun.
Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you got a lot out of this show. It's been great having people having your comments, and feel free to ask us any questions. We hang out in the Coach's Corner discussion group and watch, and we'll respond to your questions if you have anything to follow up with. But until next time, enjoy. Take care, everybody.